this episode of Kyber Close. I'm Mike Giuffrida, President of Kyber Security, joined again by Bob Thomas, VCIO, VCISO for Kyber and our clients. Welcome, Bob.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, and every time so far, but what are you going to do? All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the FTC Safeguards Rule. We talked about this back in June when it went into effect, and now what's going on. Let's just see if we can get a little update on what's happening with this and what organizations should be thinking about.
Well, so middle of June, the FTC Safeguards Rule took effect. That means that enforcement was available at that point. People could get fined if they weren't performing as expected and protecting data, which is really what this is all about. These are financial institutions that are responsible for collecting data as part of their business and properly protecting that data. And as things get rolling, people are becoming concerned about what security should I have in place in order to protect this data. And I think really they should be concerned about how is that data being stored in their system, in the systems that they subscribe to, things that they don't necessarily have control over. They're in some software as a service package, and let's use car dealers as an example because they're part of the covered entities with this. Okay, they don't have their stuff on site inside a system, but they put it in somebody else's system. How is it protected? How is the data getting transmitted? All of those things are becoming concerns, and rightfully so, because there's a clause in this particular rule that allows people to do whistleblowing. So if somebody gets fired, not happy that they got fired, and they saw what was improper use of personally identifiable information and the protection of it was not proper, they could basically call the Federal Trade Commission and say, hey, this company is doing this, I think you should investigate, and the fines are steep. They're per day fines until you remedy the problem.
So I want to tighten up a couple of things that you went on. I'm going to start with the last one first. Whistleblower does that just for malice, just because it gives them a little self-satisfaction to stick it to the man. They get a reward for doing it based on the fines that were levied and collected, and the numbers are substantial. We've heard anywhere between 15% and 30% as the reward number. So someone
people
gets
are
fined
motivated.
$100,000, they can get $30,000 in their pocket.
Motivated.
That could be motivated.
Yeah.
If you were someone who was willing to do that. So the other part you said,
and they can be anonymous. So there is protection for the people that are doing the whistleblowing as well. So
okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's fine. So something we talked about last time, but just as a quick recap, first you said financial institutions, which I think in everybody's head immediately thinks bank, credit union,
Yeah.
right?
It's not really that.
Yeah, and then you said something about a car dealer. So tighten up the definition for me a little bit here so we can understand what people need to be concerned about.
So I started with PII, so personally identifiable information. Let's picture a car dealer first, and then I'll give you some others that fall under this umbrella. Car dealer has a finance department. That finance department that finances leases, loans out money for cars, collects a tremendous amount of data on whoever is buying that car. Tremendous amount of financial data, background data, tax returns. What are they doing with that data? How are they storing it? That is the overriding concern with this entire rule. And it's not just pointed at car dealers, but they have never been governed as tightly as they are going to be with this rule. Check cashing institutions. Well, in order to cash a check, what are they doing? They're taking the check. It's got information on it, not on you necessarily, although it could be, but they're checking all your ID and your background to make sure that you are who you say you are. They're collecting that information. Credit unions that are not governed by the FDIC or some other insurance institution, those are qualifiers. Financial advisors that are not governed by the SEC, they're covered under this.
Non-banking financial institutions who collect PII for the sake of performing a financial
Right.
transaction in some way.
Right. If they're
Accountants is a
stored,
big one.
accountants are a big one,
hearing a
and
lot
it's
about that.
mostly pointed at accountants that do tax returns.
Tax returns.
Because of course we go back to the whole, how much data do you collect? Well, I've got tax returns. I want to create a credit card fraudulently.
Right.
I have everything I need to do that if I have your tax return.
Right.
And that's what everybody's worried about. How do we limit the amount of fraud that exists out in the world? Well, if you stop PII from being spread out or harvested in some way, that's really the first place to start.
So let's talk a little bit about what they have to do to comply with this. What kinds of controls are in place? Maybe at a high level, we don't need to go into detail. Maybe we can do some subsequent episodes on the detail of some of the more complex ones. But what kinds of things are there? Are the check boxes they have to go through to be able to be in compliance?
Yeah,
with this?
I think that the three biggies that you start with is you have to have a security plan. A lot of people call it a written information security plan. It basically governs what data you have, how are you protecting it, and what happens if you don't have access to it. If a system breaks, if a system is ransomware, and you no longer have access to that, what kind of pain does that cause? What's your reaction to it? It's kind of the precursor to disaster recovery and business continuity, which is the follow-on. You need a DR plan. You have to have some way of recovering. How are you protecting the data, backing it up, storing it off-site, securely encrypted, all the right things that happen with a good backup system. And how do I get back? I've had the system working. It's broken because somebody invaded it and shut it down. How do I get back to a running operating system? Do I restore? Do I have equipment I have to buy? All those things. And then incident response is the other, kind of the bigger animal. Incident response about any breach or loss of data or loss of information that was unintentional. I think that's the best way to describe it. Do you have a plan? If this happens, I do this. I call somebody. Maybe I call my cyber insurance carrier. Do I have cyber insurance? Does that carrier help me? Do they have response teams, forensics teams at the ready? Do I call my managed service and security provider? Do they help me? Do they have resources? I think it's those different pieces of the puzzle that make up the top three things that you have to have.
Well, those sound like the things that you can't just go buy and install, right? So there's a lot of controls, right? There's a lot of technical controls in there, like multi-factor and those kinds of things, which you could theoretically accomplish getting multi-factor implemented in a week, but you're not going to get an IR plan, a security plan, a DR plan done in a week. So if you want to get yourself compliant, then it's important that you go through and get those processes started, because those are big and chunky.
They are
and that's
chunky.
what a lot of organizations are really going through at this point to get the heavy lifting stuff done.
Yeah.
Whether they do or don't have the technical controls in place yet, those are easier lifts for
They are definitely quicker to do. I mean, you could turn multi-factor on overnight. That's a given that you can do that. You have to do it right. You have to follow the process. You have to know what systems are capable of doing multi-factor and have that feature enabled. But I hate to say easy, but those are definitely easier.
a lot more accessible. There's not a lot of decisions to make in the middle of that. There's not meetings and conversations. It's hire. If you don't know how to do it, hire somebody to do it. They're going to get it done. You have to pay for it.
Just do it.
Okay.
All the other stuff that we're talking about, it is heavy lifting. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of interviewing different departments, because different departments have different requirements when you get into disaster recovery and trying to get a system back up and running. There's 5 different systems running the company. What's the most important one? Everybody thinks theirs is most important.
Sounds like we should probably do a whole episode on that. So why don't we wrap this one up here? Programs in place. Whistleblowers could be in your back closet, just waiting to do the whistleblowing.
Yes,
and it's time to get your documentation in place.
Yes, yeah. Policies, procedures, and a plan.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for this information on the FTC Safeguards
Thanks,
rule, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Kyber Clips.
That's good.
Hi, thanks for joining us today on Kyber Clips. I hope you enjoyed the information. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to our channel. You can comment below, or you can always reach out to us at sales@kybersecure.com. Hope you have a great day.